Good evening and welcome to the special study session for Monday, April 13th, 2015. Would you please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Binsbacher.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Carlett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Here.
Councilmember Binsbacher,
Here.
Councilmember Patena,
Here.
Councilmember Finn,
Here.
Councilmember Hunt,
Here.
Councilmember Leone.
Here.
Thank you. Now we will move on to our first meeting of the fiscal year 2016 budget study session. Mr. Swenson.
Thank you, Mayor Carlett and council members. Let me thank you all in advance for spending a few evenings with us going over the budget. Of course, it's one of the most important things that we do each year in the council calendar and the administrative calendar. And we presented it to you, of course, at the last council meeting and gave you the overview. I talked about some of the highlights, the narrative pieces, and Katie Gregory, our Deputy Director of Finance and Budget, went through some of the overarching numbers. And what we won't be doing is repeating all of that. That was a kind of a nice place to start, and it really frames the discussion we're having. But what we'll be doing tonight is moving into some of the operations and department budgets of the city. I want to call your attention to a couple of things here as we get started. So in front of you, you have a couple of pieces of paper that were passed out. One is the schedule for this evening, and it's also on the overhead. And what we've done this year, which is a little different than previous years, is done some groupings of the operations into some key categories. So what you'll see is public safety, administration, what we're calling leadership, management, and communications, and that's the overarching management and leadership function of the city, and then ending with planning and development. Now, in each of these areas, the directors and key staff from the departments are here to respond to any questions that the council might have. And as you can see, the chamber has a lot of staff in it this evening, and that's both a reflection of us wanting to make sure that we have everybody here that can answer all of your questions, but also a reflection of the importance of the budget and their interest in the subject. What we'll be doing in terms of the presentations this evening is I'll speak a little bit about each of the departments, some of the highlights, then Katie will go into a little more of the budget detail in those areas, and then the directors can come up and speak with you if you have questions for them. One of the things that we each year after we have a budget session with the council, we kind of debrief and think about how can we do things maybe better each year or each coming year. And one of the things that we really reflected on as we came into this budget is trying to not simply speak to and rephrase everything that's in your book. Some years I think we've done that. We go through and we open the book and we sort of talk through everything that you already have in front of you. And we're going to make the assumption that you have had an opportunity to look at that and not go through a repetitive process where each director comes up and says, okay, on page 624, here's the pie chart that explains our budget. Now, if you want to get into the detail on page 624, we absolutely can do that. And if you have questions about the budget at that level of detail, we're more than happy to respond to them. But in terms of the presentation, we're going to try to keep it at kind of a higher level. Does that seem reasonable in terms of a place to begin? Okay. Let me call your attention to one more piece of paper before we get started. And that's the one that's labeled Council Workshop, Identified Budget Interests. It's kind of this little table. It's one sheet. And this, you'll recall at your recent workshop at Trine University, not only did the council establish the policy goals, but there were several things that you mentioned that you wanted us to pay attention to when we put the budget together. Now, admittedly, at that point, we had put a lot of the budget together already by necessity of the calendar, but we were able to respond to the issues that you have brought up. And most of them in specific detail responding to exactly what you asked. A couple where it's not precisely what you had suggested here simply in the interest of time, but we're going to show a commitment to getting back to that. So at various points tonight and in the future sessions, we'll refer to this just as a reminder that we have responded to all of the things that you brought up. So with that, Katie, did you have any, I think you wanted to give a little orientation to the book
Right.
itself, just in case there was any confusion about the document that the council has.
Yes, so thank you, Mayor and Council. If I could just remind you about just sort of the setup of the book. It is set up by department. So if you're looking, if we're talking about a certain area and you have an interest in that area, you certainly can refer to that. There are page numbers on all the pages. So hopefully, if you have a specific interest and you know where you want to go to, please let us know. We can all refer to the same thing. Additionally, within each department, you'll find blue worksheets. These blue worksheets are what we call our supplemental worksheets. Behind that, you'll see all the detail about the supplement. So I reminded you at the last time to maybe get a good sense about what was in the performance, the first part, the performance spotlight and the performance measures. Tonight, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about what's incorporated into the budget and how these are meeting service needs throughout the organization. So you'll hear a little bit about that. And then just overall, if there are any questions you have, even if it's not on items that we're covering this evening, certainly if there are things that we can answer for you this evening or have relationships to things that we're discussing, please bring those up. The idea is to make this as conversational as we can and to allow you as a council to speak with each other about some interests, but also to give staff some focus and direction on some things that you either do or do not see in the budget. Okay? Great.
And I'm glad you mentioned conversational because, Mayor and council members, we really want to make sure that this is a conversation, that any questions, comments, ideas you have, that we're here to talk about those, and if there's a consensus by the council to move in any particular direction, we're going to capture that, write that down, make sure we have it, and then we'll be doing recaps when we get together each time. So if there are comments or items like that that come from this evening, we'll write those down, get them to you, and then we'll begin the next session by starting with where we left off. And if we're moving more slowly than the sheet I just shared with you, that's fine. We'll just pick up wherever we end. Mayor Carlett has suggested we break it around 8 o'clock tonight, and that's kind of the way we've tried to structure the evening, but you never know if you're hitting it right or not in terms of managing the time. So,
Good,
Sound
thank
good?
you. Thank you,
All
we're ready
right.
to begin.
well, with that, we'll jump in. Public safety, of course, is one of the top priorities of the council, and we'll begin there. But before we do that, I just wanted to remind you again of your goals. We always start a session like that, kind of this touchstone, really, with your leadership is something that we build into all of the work of the city and, most importantly, the budget. Public safety, of course, is one of the top services, most important services that we provide in the city. And the police department is front and center in providing a safe community for our citizens. And we're very fortunate, as you know, to have an excellent police department. And we have seen reductions in Part 1 crime each of the past few years, in fair measure because of the approach that the men and women of the police department take. They use predictive policing, which is one of the most up-to-date concepts in how you deploy your resources using data about where crime occurs. And that allows them to operate at a very high level of efficiency. The key points to mention with respect to their approach are using performance data in how they deploy. And that is a tool that Chief Minter and his staff use to make sure that they're putting the resources where they are most needed in the community. Another point that is stressed within the department is training. Right now, for example, the CALIA, that's the accreditation folks, are here going through a reaccreditation process for our police department, and the chief and I met with the peer reviewers. Those are police professionals from other cities just today, and they were commenting on the high level of training that we have, and that's real important. We focus a lot of energy in training our officers because you really can't overstate that. You know, when they're out in the community, they're having to make quick judgments. They're having to deploy resources in the face of changing circumstances in front of them, and training is a huge part of what they do. As you all know, particularly under Chief Minter's leadership, we've really gotten out into the community. You're aware of the awards that we've received for our UCAN United Community Action Network, but that's just one of the many community-based programs that the chief and the department have, and this list just kind of ticks off some of those. Coffee with a Cop, the Citizens Academy, the Seniors and Law Enforcement Together. These are all programs that the department uses to reach different segments of the population. And this has really helped not only in our crime reduction, but it's also helped in the efficient use of resources. We have not had to add a lot of staff resources to achieve the reductions we've seen. And it's because the chief has taken the resources that he's had, working with the department to deploy those resources in a way that will benefit the community with improved reduction in crime, and also a sense of confidence by citizens. Because in each of these interactions, whether it's with seniors, youth in our community, or citizens around a block watch, we're creating relationships. And that's the most important thing in community-oriented policing and public safety, is creating those relationships and working with different populations. That said, we are adding some resources to the department. As I mentioned in my overview, we're adding 2 sworn officers this year. And that's in response to one of the comments that the council made at your workshop, as well as Chief Minter and his staff's assessment of what they need in terms of meeting the growth within the community. There has been, again, finally, some new growth in the community. We're seeing, particularly in the northern part of the city, some new development happening, and we will begin to see growth each year in departments like police, where we need to keep up with that growth and make sure that we have a deployment of officers and support and technical employees that can meet that growth. We've added a crime scene technician, and we have increased the amount of technology that we're using, particularly the body-worn cameras. And of course, you know, this has become real popular now nationally because of some unfortunate circumstances in other communities around the country. We have begun this before all that, and we're bringing a pilot program in this year with body-worn cameras, and we'll be increasing that over time. So I think, Katie, you had a few things you wanted to mention here, too.
Excuse me just a minute. Sure.
Yes, of course.
Councilmember Hunt.
I tried that. Carl, just so we don't get any farther with me being slightly confused, are the things that you're telling us now things we've already accomplished? Or I understand what you said about kind of grouping things and not going page by page, but are these things, because I know we already had body-worn cameras and so on, are these actually things we are adding right now that are in this budget?
Yeah, it's both.
Okay.
It's both. We have resources in it, and it's that's a great question, Councilmember Hunt. And what we're doing in this presentation maybe might be a little different from some you might remember when you were on the council years ago. We're not simply going through a line item of here's what we did and here's what we're going to do, but rather talking about the significant trends within each department and how we're responding to those trends in terms of either adding personnel or equipment or technology in pursuit of a particular goal. And so it's really a bit of both. Is that-
Carla?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, getting on with what Vicki said on those body cameras, is all the police officers going to have them at this time?
Not at this time. Chief Minter, would you like to come down and speak to this? There you are.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Leone, what we're currently doing is we started a pilot program for body-worn cameras in December of last year. We're looking at a 6-month pilot program for the body-worn cameras. Council last year in last year's budget approved the purchase of 54 body-worn cameras. So we currently have 54 Peoria police officers who are currently wearing body-worn cameras. Just to kind of give you an idea of how they're currently deployed. All 10 of our traffic officers are currently wearing body-worn cameras. Our 2 canine officers have body-worn cameras. And then we have 42 patrol officers who are wearing body-worn cameras. 13 assigned to the North Precinct and 29 assigned to the South Precinct. So that gives us approximately 44% of our uniformed personnel are currently wearing body-worn cameras at this time. The request that's before you is for an additional 54 body-worn cameras, which will double the amount that we currently have, and that would totally outfit all of our patrol officers.
And just one question, how they working, how they working the cameras? I mean, do you find them okay? I mean, I don't know,
Yeah,
what do you think of them? Let's put it that way.
Well, we're getting very good response from the officers who are testing and going through the pilot project for the body-worn cameras. They've been very beneficial. We went from officers being somewhat hesitant about putting body-worn cameras on to now officers asking when we're going to get additional cameras for the other officers to wear body-worn cameras. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about putting cameras on officers is 2 words often come up: accountability and transparency. And what we're seeing is it has really helped us in the area of accountability and transparency. We had 7 officers who were wearing body-worn cameras who had complaints filed against them. And once we reviewed the video and found out that the allegations against the officers weren't exactly what we were seeing on the video, and when we contacted the people and asked if they'd like to come in and watch the video and actually point out the conduct that they alleged that the officer was involved in, none of those investigations proved to be founded. They were all proved to be unfounded. So the body-worn cameras have really helped us as far as bringing some things to light that maybe would have required a full investigation before.
Do you review them every day or whenever you have to?
We don't review them every day. One of the things that we have in place is an audit program. We have 2 lieutenants. Each are responsible for reviewing, I believe it's 6 videos each. 1 lieutenant assigned to the North Station, 1 lieutenant assigned to the South Station, and they're responsible for doing random audits of the videos.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Welcome. I have a question also in that regard, Chief. Data storage, how does data storage happen? How long do we store it? Is this something that just gets meshed into our IT department, or is there an additional cost?
Well, Mayor and Council, that's a great question. The vendor we selected is Taser, which is based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and Taser has a cloud-based solution for storing our videos. So that really helps us. We didn't have to buy any servers to store the videos. Right now, we're doing pretty good because, you know, of course, when you're looking at storage, you're looking at the amount of data that you're looking at having to store and how long you're going to have to store a lot of that data. We basically follow the state retention criteria, but looking at the current information that we have, right now about 65% of the data that we've collected by virtue of the body-worn cameras is non-criminal in nature. So that information is deleted after 180 days, 6 months. So we're coming up on a 6-month period where about 65% of our data that we've collected so far will be deleted from that cloud storage device. We expect by the end of this year about 4.5 terabytes of data will be collected, and that basically breaks down to about 120 gigs of video per year for the officers. Now, one of the things that Taser International offers to us is a program where for $49 a month per camera, it involves unlimited data storage. So that's something that a lot of law enforcement agencies are looking at because you never know sometimes how much data you're going to end up storing. It's kind of like your cell phone plan. Some months you do really well in staying below your limit for your cell phone plan. Sometimes you go over and they hit you with a pretty hefty charge. So we want to avoid that type of possible financial impact on the city and the council.
Thanks. Mr. Finn?
a quick question and a comment. First of all, I think you set the bar pretty high for everybody else following behind you for preparedness and detailed information, so thank you, that's quite impressive. Two questions for you on the budget. I see the additional officers are going to be, looks like they're deployed to the south, is that correct?
The additional 2 officers?
Yeah.
Well, I don't believe there's anything in there that states where the officers are going to be deployed.
I'm sorry, I was just looking at page 693.
Okay.
It says that there's going to be 86 in the south and 56 in the north. I was just curious about, is that data-driven?
I'm sorry, which page are you on?
Uh-oh, all that preparedness, I threw him for a loop.
690.
693.
It's your FTE count. So that's
Okay.
just...
Yeah, that's our basic FTE count. What we're looking at as far as additional officers, additional staffing coming on the department is we're looking at the north part of the city, and we're looking at our response time and our calls for service in that area. So that's basically our primary focus right now, is our staffing in the north part of the city right now.
Okay.
Do you need some clarifications?
No. Nope. Okay. Second question, as I was looking at page 692, I see a 5.2% increase in the police administration. Is that from the additional technician that is being put into the budget?
Okay.
that for you, just
That
a
one I may need to plan over the budget.
Okay.
For admin. Under police admin, you're saying? Under police administration, the 5.2% increase?
Yes. I was just curious if that was a result of the additional crime scene technician that was added, I believe, the additional 1 FTE?
Right.
Is that correct? I hope I'm reading the same book everybody
No,
else
that
is.
wouldn't actually be in the area of administration. The administration, the increase, I should say, associated with administration, and again, this wasn't a specific budget add, but it's related to retirement and wages, all of the wages and personnel costs associated with that. So, of course, there were some pay adjustments that occurred in the last fiscal year, let's see, anything else on that, Barry, you can think of? Some uniform allowances?
Yeah, and also there was a supplemental on some training required in the MOU that was put in the admin.
Okay. Okay. That's all I got. Thanks.
Any other questions?
That got me all. Keep going?
Let's keep
Okay,
going.
so I was actually, I was going to just spend a little bit of time on this slide talking about, just in general, what you've probably already looked at, there's about 295 employees currently within the city's police department. There's a number of things, when we talk about the programs and services provided by the police department, clearly it's not just patrol services, it includes a number of things such as our code compliance, our park ranger program, our, investigations, a number of very different aspects in our community outreach and those types of things. So, of course, the budget package in front of you does continue to provide enough funding to be able to continue those programs. Included in there are some things like our traffic prevention program and the crime prevention program. We're asking for some funding to continue those, as well as provide some funding for leadership training, firearm training, and professional development of our police officers. So there's a little bit of add in there for that as well. And then, as Carl mentioned, the officers, the crime scene technician, really to help support changes in the way that we collect and analyze crime data, and the evidence and the type of evidence that we receive. And then, just overall ensuring that the budget as proposed includes a number of important pieces of equipment through our our forfeiture funds. We're able to provide a number of different equipments, and you saw that in the budget request on that blue worksheet of a number of, some vests, some other type of important equipment that's going to help support the police department in their operations on a daily basis.
Chief, I have a question for you. I know that you spend a lot of time in the community, talking to the citizens. You have specific kinds of meetings. I think you had one this evening, wasn't it?
Correct, the trilogy.
Right. So my question is, I know we do a city survey on a regular basis, but is there a need for a community survey specifically for public safety?
Well, Mayor and members of council, we do a monthly survey and we do a quarterly citizen survey report that's forwarded to me. So we do get that feedback on a regular basis. We encourage people to send us feedback either by getting hard copies of the survey form at the police station, they can download it over the web, or they can use it on the mobile phone app. So we do get that feedback on a regular basis.
You think you're getting a lot of response from that?
I think we're getting a pretty good response. One of the things that we've done is we've really done a good job of, using social media to expand our outreach to our citizens to provide a lot more feedback. So I think we've almost doubled the amount of surveys that we're getting on a monthly basis. So I think we're still doing a pretty good job of getting feedback and information from our citizens via our surveys.
Okay, good. I think that one of our greatest strengths is the communication that we have with our citizens and our police department. And I would just want to make sure that we keep that up under all circumstances, no matter what. And I also think the transparency with the body cameras adds to that. So I think those two things hand in hand are going to make sure that we stay separate from any of those negative things that have happened throughout the country.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mayor, and that kind of civic engagement is huge, and it's a key to really not just our policing approach, but our whole city approach, as you know. And the National Citizen Survey does have a number of specific questions about public safety, to not just, are you safe, but do you feel safe? I mean, it gets at those questions, because that's a lot of it as well. It's not just the actual crime data, but how do people feel? Do they feel safe in the community? And, we've gotten good marks on that by and large across the city, but it's something we keep very, very close focus on, and what's underpinning a lot of that.
Any other questions?
This is on the police department. Last year, I asked for 2 more park rangers, and I don't see it on here at all. Did you forget about it?
Oh, no, we have not forgotten, but you're right that we're not recommending new rangers in this budget, Councilmember Leone, and the chief can explain why we believe that that's appropriate.
Mayor and council, what we've looked at as far as, and Councilmember Leone, as far as the park ranger program, we have 5 park rangers to cover about 34 parks. But the park rangers spend the majority of their time covering the major parks, which is Rio Vista and Pioneer Park. What we looked at is they spend about 75% of their time covering those 2 parks. Then they spend about another 20% of their time on the other large neighborhood parks. Then about 5% of their time covering the trails. Now, to supplement what our park rangers do to lessen the fiscal impact on the city is we also have our patrol volunteers that assist us with covering the parks and also covering the trails. And then we also started a park ranger reserve program, kind of similar to a police officer reserve program, where so far we have 1 person who's serving as a reserve park ranger. We're looking at that as kind of a hiring stream to get people interested and involved in the park ranger program. But we also have our park watch program. Now, that has not taken off as well as we expected it to, but we're looking to see what we can do to generate some additional interest in getting people in neighborhoods to be involved in the park watch program and to kind of sign up for different times of the day and the week to keep an eye on parks in their areas and report that information to us. So we think that based on the programs that we've put in place and the fact that we're seeing relatively low amount of crime in our parks and on our trails, we think that we're doing good so far with the staffing that we have at this particular point in time.
Well, how long you been doing this park thing that you're talking about?
Which one specifically? We've been doing the Park Watch program.
Yeah.
That's been in place for probably about a year and a half. The Park Ranger Reserve program, that's relatively new. We brought that on board last year when we had somebody showing interest in, wanting to possibly become a park ranger and ask about a reserve program for park rangers. And then we've had the patrol volunteers assisting us with parks and trails for a couple of years now since we've increased and kind of boosted our patrol volunteer program.
And who patrols the trails? The regular police department or park rangers?
Well, both.
Both?
Both. The park rangers are they spend about 5% of their time on the trails. The volunteers assist in supplementing that. Our park ranger reserves assist with that, and then also our patrol officers assist with monitoring the trails and the parks.
Well, I don't know what actually you're doing, but I can't see anything being done. I get complaints about Pioneer Park, Country Meadows Park. One lady says she can't walk the trails because she's scared of dogs running around and homeless guys. And she said, do you have anybody patrolling the area? I said, we should have. She never sees them. So my question is, I still think we need 2 more park rangers. That's my opinion. Okay?
Well, Mayor and Councilmember Leone, when those types of incidents are brought to your attention, if you can forward them to us, because we look at those types of situations on a weekly basis when we have our weekly problem-solving meetings, and then also on a monthly basis, we do a report on any criminal activity in any of the parks in and around the parks. So when that information comes up, if you can forward that to us, and we'll include that as part of our deployment and staffing assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hunt?
Just a quick question, Chief. On your trail kit,
Patrol?
yeah, with regular police, the reserves are kids for the most part, not reserves, the,
Volunteers?
no, the ones that want to be when they grow up.
Oh, the academy?
Oh, you talking about the Explorers?
Right, the
Pardon?
Explorers, that's right.
Are you referring to our Explorer program?
Yes, are the ones for the trail, are this one gentleman that you have or person you have, is it an adult or is it
He's an adult,
a young
yes.
person?
Yes, he's an
Okay.
adult.
So this is not going to be like the police cadet
No.
program? Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, go on.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Before Carl starts in with the fire, I meant to provide some of this information up front for you to just give you some overview of the fire medical department. There's about 176 employees in the fire medical department, about a $27 million budget. It's mostly general fund, it's all general funded. And also, just to give you some sense of some of the programs and areas in there, we have fire prevention, which includes our inspections and investigations, as well as our plan review. We also have fire support services, which are those areas that provide support to all of our fire equipment and ladder trucks and all of those, as well as providing to ensure that there's enough equipment and supplies for our fire operations. The emergency medical services, which, as you know, is the medical arm of the services that are provided by our fire department. Fire training, which is a division that provides training to all the not only just required training to all of our firefighters, but also provides additional training. And as you know, we've got rescue swimmers now, we've got hazmat, we have a number of important, trainings that our firefighters go through on an annual basis. And of course, being prepared for emergency management. If there's ever a major emergency in the city, we have our emergency management division who's providing those types of services and can open our emergency operations center for us. And then the bulk of this is our fire operations, which is our day-to-day operations. So just to kind of give you a broad overview of that.
Nicely done, Katie. I'll add just a little bit to what Katie just said. And this, of course, is the second of the key public safety departments in the city, and it really is key. We're fortunate to have a great fire and emergency medical service in the city over a challenging deployment. We have a lot of area, a complex service delivery circumstance with the lake, and areas that are remote to get to from time to time, and our fire and EMS folks are our first responders there, and they do a great job. We are recommending some improvements, enhancements this year in this area. We're adding 2 firefighters and 4 more that we expect to get from a federal grant. And that federal grant is one of the grants that is offered to police and fire departments around the country, where the federal money will come in and pay for the first 2 years of the grant, and then the city comes in and pays the cost of the firefighters after that. And so it's a real nice way to help us in those first few years, because the council knows, we budget long-term, we balance long-term. We're not just balanced in the year ahead. So this is a way for us to bring some firefighters on now, create a full deployment at the lake, and give us some additional resources going forward. So we're real happy about that. I also want to mention we have improved our equipment. We've had some concerns about the exposure of our firefighters to carcinogens in the workforce. As you all know, the material that are now used as fire retardant for keeping fires from spreading in our homes and businesses also put off some different kinds of chemicals, and there's a sense that exposure can have a negative impact on the health of our firefighters. And so we are adding some additional turnout gear. We're making some improvements in our fire stations and in the way that we manage our equipment so as to minimize the risk for our firefighters in that changing environment. Finally, speaking of a changing environment, as you all know, we changed the name of our fire department to our fire and medical department this year. And that wasn't just a name change for semantic. It was a name change that really reflects more and more what those professionals do. It's increasingly an emergency medical service that is provided. And we are evaluating some pretty significant changes in how we deploy and respond to emergency medical going forward. As you know, ambulance patient transport has been something that we have been discussing for some time as to whether the city should get into the ambulance business, so to speak. I tend to believe that is a better way to provide service than with contractors. That's challenging, though, in our environment. It's from a legal standpoint, really stacked towards having the companies contract with the city for that service, but that legal environment is changing. And we are prepared to analyze that this coming year and look at really whether we change up our whole deployment around emergency medical. So this budget is a good, solid budget for now, but coming this year, we're going to have some policy discussions about whether we make some more sweeping changes in how we deliver our emergency medical service. So with that, I'll turn it over to Katie to drill down on some of the issues there.
Yeah, thank you. And just to kind of reiterate just a little bit on your council workshop identified budget interest, just, one of your interests was to increase our public safety resources. So with this, again, one that Carl didn't mention is paramedic training for 6 firefighters in the upcoming budget. We are looking to train 6 more firefighters, and again, in light of maybe some changes that are coming and the business models associated with the fire medical department, I would anticipate that those are things that we're going to continue to see the need for, where we should move more towards that paramedicine, community paramedicine model. So again, that would be something I think this council would be interested in hearing about. And then also, you had ambulance service on your list as well. And so, as Carl mentioned, we'd like to bring that back to some future study sessions and really dive deep into that. We're already working on some things currently with the fire department and doing some analysis of the overall costs and expenditures and revenues associated with that. So we'll want to do a thorough review of that, ensure that we understand the model, what the model means, how it's going to work within the city of Peoria, and then come back to council with some more detailed information on that.
Of all the services we provide, this is the most changing, the most dynamic right now. And part of it is driven by the changes in healthcare through the Affordable Care Act, and we've all read and experienced a lot of that, and that's evolving and changing. Additionally, the market for these contract ambulance providers has changed. They merge. Some of them go bankrupt. Some of them from other parts of the country want to come into the area. It's a very dynamic environment, and we want to stay in front of that and make sure that we're keeping focused on providing the very best in emergency medical services for our citizens, and I know you feel the same. And we will need to drill down on that in a pretty significant way in the year ahead to make decisions going forward about how we're going to provide that service.
Councilmember Leone?
Come on. Thank you. Last year, again, I asked for 2 paramedics for the ladders, the chief. Your turn. Are we doing something with that? I see,
You asked for 2 additional paramedics,
for the ladders, yes.
right, and so we're proposing 6
Yeah, I saw
for you.
that.
So that's what we're bringing forward this year is 6 additional paramedics. And as I mentioned, and as Carl was just describing, as we kind of go forward and get a better sense of what kind of business lines we're going to be involved in with our firefighting and fire medical department, we would anticipate that that's going to be an important piece as part of bringing that business plan together, is to
Okay.
add more.
And also, on this, moving firefighters, I know what it means, but, like, say 199, when you have to go out to the lake, how many firefighters in 199? 4?
Councilman Leone, currently we have 6, 2 on each shift, and then we augment that during the day with 2 more on each shift to give us a full crew during the day, during the peak period, and then we bring them back into the system during the evenings.
So if there's something going on at the lake, you take them from 199 to the lake, the firefighters?
Yes,
You take
that's
2?
that's the station at the lake.
You take 2 of them.
We take 4 during the day, and in the evening, we send the 2, and then we back them up with a full crew from one of the other stations.
So what
Currently.
So-
Let me just
Go ahead.
expand on that, Councilman Leone. That is the station that we're putting in for the grant. So if we get the grant plus the 2 that we're getting, then we'll have a full crew 24/7 at that station.
And what's a full crew, 6?
No, 4.
4? Then what happens when they take 2 of the firefighters out and something comes up that 199 has to go? Do you only get 2 firefighters instead of 4?
Currently, we do in the evening hours, from 8 in the evening to 8 in the morning, you'll get 2 firefighters and backed up by 4 more firefighters from one of the surrounding station, the closest surrounding station.
So if something happens that you need 199, you'll have 4 firefighters out there?
During the day, we would have 4 firefighters. If we get our grant, then we'll have a full staff permanently.
Then when do they go to the lake?
The station is located at the lake.
Is it?
It's just off the lake shore there.
Okay, thank you. Just checking. Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Thank you, Thank you, Mayor. Carl, on page 428 for the Rover firefighters, I just need some clarification. In your description, it shows 7 firefighters. Is that a typo? Is it really 6?
Yes, that is a typo.
Okay. That's one thing.
That's the only mistake in the whole book.
I wouldn't go that far.
Can I record that? And then the second question is, if we don't get the federal grant for the four additional, how do we cover?
Well, what we'll be doing is coming back to the council to discuss how we might staff more quickly going forward.
So like a mid-year adjustment
Yeah,
of some sort?
exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a moment. I think a mid-year adjustment is going to make us miss summer at the lake. We cannot afford to miss another summer at the lake with how busy it is out there. We need to be very careful about staffing.
Indeed. I guess a question in that regard is, when would we expect to get an affirmative answer or not on the grant?
Mayor Carlott, we will know something by possibly June, maybe as early as late May. And we'll keep our ears open to see if we hear anything as to, they're pretty tight-lipped.
Well, we've gotten this grant before, and I think we're experienced as to how to get that grant, so I have faith that we're going to get it.
We've
I
actually,
am just sure we are going to get that grant.
we have actually improved in
Yes.
how to get it.
We need those firefighters.
Mayor Carlott, just as some clarification on that. So currently, the way it's set up is that during the day, there's a full complement of firefighters there. During the summer, a number of years ago, I think 5 or 6 years ago, council approved some overtime funding to ensure that we have, during the summer days, or the summertime, a full for firefighters at the lake for the summer.
For the day.
For the evenings too, I believe. That's what the overtime was to provide for, was to also, to make sure that we had full coverage over the summer. The high-use season, not just the high-use times of day, but the high-use season.
Right. Okay, I would just like to suggest that as soon as we know about that grant, you inform us, and then we quickly decide how we want to compensate for that. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I think we're, in the interest of time, we really have to be right on top of that.
We agree, and we will be. So,
Okay.
you bet.
Councilmember Finn.
I just have a quick question for you here, Chief. I'm trying to I love these performance reports, by the way.
Oh, good.
I think they're fantastic. It sets goals. I love the fact that everybody's kind of setting a goal that's getting better and better. I love the fact
Thank
that
you.
we have a 98% rating of the fire department as good or excellent, and we want to improve it to 100%. So I think that's fantastic. 100% is a tough goal to get to. My question for you, however, is I'm just kind of looking at the numbers on this performance report on 420. I'm looking at the ALS calls and the BLS calls in 2013, moving to 2016. Trying to understand the incredibly low projected increase in calls for 2016 compared to previous years. And then again, so I can sleep tonight and not have this churn in my head, how we have a 42% increase in ALS and BLS calls since 2013, and we have a 2.5% increase in fire personnel. I'm just trying to put that, what have we done in the past 3 or 4 years to mitigate a 40% increase in the amount of calls that we have compared to no increase in staffing? Sorry, I went pretty quick on that because it was clear in my head. I had to get it out quick.
Yes, yes.
So, Chief, I'm looking at the 2013 on the performance report, page 420. You had 6,729 ALS calls in 2013 versus 2015, the estimate is 9,976, and we're only increasing to 10,000 in 2016.
Right.
Correct. Because the number of calls and number of people in the city hasn't increased very much, we think it's going to be flat until we start seeing some growth. And that was kind of a guesstimate.
One thing just to probably clarify, so fiscal year 2015 was an estimate, probably, I'm not sure when, before
Usually
the
in
fiscal
December,
year. So
yeah.
it was an extrapolation probably to get to that number. My sense is that since that time, you probably see that it's trended a little flatter than that. What we can absolutely do, Councilmember Finn, is at the next meeting, we will get that information update on that. Because I do think it's important to get a sense of the trends of what we're getting on ALS and BLS calls.
Yeah, I'm don't have it as a secret, I'm a very big supporter of public safety, police and fire, and I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we're budgeting it correctly, and we're not budgeting below what we should in public safety, and we end up missing a mark there. So that's the reason for my question. I just want to kind of have it sure in my own mind that this is making sense. So
Right.
I don't need anything special, I just thought I'd ask that question.
Well, and I think that one of the things just to be aware of too is that just like many of our programs and services, when we bring on a new fire station, we're bringing on a new fire station with some anticipation that there's going to be growth that they're going to grow into as well. So you may not, in points in time, when you're looking at just a 3-year period, you may not necessarily see the same level of growth in staffing, let's say, related to calls for service, just because maybe we had some ability to deal with some of these calls for service because we brought on new facilities and additional staff at points in time.
Okay.
Councilmember Patena.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, as long as you're up here, just let me ask you a question. How many pairs of turnouts do our firefighters currently have?
Councilman Patena, currently we have 2 sets of turnouts for about 20% of our staffing. And so with what we're asking for in the budget, we'll be able to have 100% of our personnel with 2 pairs of turnouts.
Okay, and then after the firefighters return from a fire, is there a requirement that they get them cleaned or washed so that they can remain healthy?
Yes, currently what we do is if they go to a fire and they're contaminated, then we have probably another 20% of extra turnouts at our resource that we'll bring out to them and swap them, and then by next shift, they'll have them washed and ready to go for them.
Councilmember Binsbacher?
Okay, I just want to go back to the grant, if I may, regarding the paramedics. So the budget calls for an additional 6 paramedics. The grant, is that above and beyond? And if that grant doesn't go through, then we're going to look at where we can find funding for the additional, above and beyond the 6 paramedics.
Right, so the budget as it's proposed includes funding for 6 paramedics, as you mentioned. It also includes, as addition, funding at the very minimum 2 firefighters, but when we go and ask for the grant funding, we're actually asking for 6 total, so it's the 2 plus an additional 4. So we're asking for 6 new firefighters. Now, those firefighters aren't necessarily going to be trained as paramedics at first. They'll go through the normal fire training academy and become firefighters as part of the city's overall complement of firefighters. Were we to not get the grant, as Carl suggested, then we would want to get back with council and share with you kind of some options for how we might be able to support those 4 that you'd be missing, because you're going to get 2, but those 4 that you'd be missing, how we might be able to support, or what might need to happen in order for us to support adding on additional firefighters in a mid-year or some other type of adjustment.
Okay.
Does that explain it?
Yes, thank you.
So I appreciate you wanting to get back to us with all of the additional changes, modifications, staffing levels for firefighters. We've been talking about a deficiency in paramedic training for a long time, a number of years. And so when you come back to us and talk about that training, I would like to know exactly when we can put in additional paramedic training. Because we've got 6 now, but we need 12. We needed 12, and then I know that we put 3 on, and then we lost some, and I'm not even sure what the net number is anymore. But I know that we are deficient in paramedics, and I know that we've changed our name from Peoria Fire to Peoria Fire and Medical for a reason. Most of our cases have to do with medical, so we really need to increase staffing where that is. So I'm anxious to see you come back with when we can restaff the paramedic training. And also, I know that there's been some conversation about transitional response vehicles, sending out the smaller vehicles with 2 firefighters on it or 2 paramedics on it, however that might be, to save, other firefighters back at the station for other kinds of calls. So, that seems to make so much common sense to me. I'd really like to see that and like to see it sooner rather than later, so that we can really evaluate what's happening in our, and that's in addition, of course, to the ambulance, to the changes in ambulance, which I see as much more long-term planning since it requires state legislation.
Thank you. I was just going to mention real quick, Mayor Carlett, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad you brought up in addition to that of how we look at the deployment going forward if we were to seek a certificate or are successful in seeking a certificate of necessity for ambulance service. In addition, there's other concepts that we've talked about within the community paramedicine concept, which would be where you have paramedics individually going out at high emergency call stations. And then there is the interest of having our existing staff be trained on for paramedics or to get to paramedic standard. And then there's the thought about what do we want for recruitment going forward? Do we want to change what our recruitment practices are with trying to hire paramedics or putting some kind of preferential status for individuals? The concepts, I think, all need to be brought forward to you in its entirety, and I think I'm really glad you bring forward. There is a short, medium, and long-term approach to that, and so we owe that to you to get that to you when we bring it back.
Good. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Good. And maybe we can schedule that as one of the longer study sessions, the seminars, you've called them?
Perfect.
Good. We'd love to.
Thanks. Councilmember Patena.
Chief, in your supplemental for paramedic training, you write in here that several members have expressed a desire to drop paramedic certification in the near future. Why is that?
Councilman Patena, paramedics that are firefighters that are paramedics, and after they've been paramedics for 20, 30 years, they start to get pretty burned out. And so we need a plan for that. We can look ahead of time and see what the attrition rate is in the drop, people that are dropped that are paramedics, and what we're going to lose in the next 5 years. We know that. The wild card is the people that are burning out and they want to opt out of the program.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. We're now going to shift gears a little bit from the public safety arena to what we're terming administration. And these are the departments that are listed on the screen in front of you: the city attorney, municipal court, city clerk, finance and budget, human resources, and information technology. And they tend to be the departments that provide administration in one degree or another for the city. Some provide direct services. Of course, the judicial branch is a direct service provider to our citizens, as is the city clerk. But most of what these departments do, we tend to think of in terms of administration. Just a little bit with respect to each of them. The city attorney's office has 26 employees and a $5.7 million budget. They do the civil law, victims assistance, the criminal law, and risk management. The municipal court has 21 FTEs with about $2.2 million. The city clerk has 7 employees, and they have about $900,000. The finance and budget department has 79 employees and about $10 million budget, and they have financial administration, financial services, tax and auditing functions, the management and budget office, where you're familiar with in these presentations, materials management, they oversee all the contract work of the city, inventory control, customer service, a revenue administration, and then the meter services, where they serve the water meters in the city, working closely with our utilities folks. Our human resources area has 19 employees and about $20 million budget, and they have human resource administration in a whole host of different ways, including all of our training and development, as well as our self-insurance and workers' compensation. That drives up some of their budget totals. And the information technology department has 41 employees and about $12 million, and they take care of all of the computer systems, our mainframes, our backup systems, our laptops and desktops, as well as the radio system for our public safety and public works employees. And so that's a kind of a 30,000 foot of what these departments do. So the focus in these areas, of course, is customer service. And as you all know, this is a key area to us in terms of how we interact with citizens. An area that's real key in that, for example, in the finance department, is answering all of the customer questions that we get about their water bills and about other charges or financial issues that they might have with the city. We continually work at making sure that we have excellent customer service. Kind of back to the questions earlier about our citizen survey, we get excellent response in that, but we're not satisfied with that. We keep working it at all times, and they monitor the call response rates very closely to make sure that they continue to have a quick response to citizens that call in, and that there's a satisfaction level that's high among citizens after they've called in, for example. And that occurs in all of these areas that have interaction with the public. Certainly the city attorney's office does that, as does our judicial area as well.
Yep, okay. That's my cue. So I just want to give a little bit of an idea of some of the things that are included in the budget. Obviously, as we've talked about before, what's very important in these areas is that, especially in our areas of IT, is that we have the ability to maintain our systems and the support for those systems. So you'll see there were a number of requests in the IT area that are going to help do that. But of course, there's other areas as well, such as in our city clerk's office, really focusing on ensuring that our agenda manager system is working. That's one that we need to have a replacement for. And then also in some of our, in financial services and in our financial services area, looking at needing to do some employee training, ensure that we have the right employees doing the right work and getting the right training associated with that, and to cover some costs associated with some things that came as part of the state's transition of sales tax to the Department of Revenue. So we have a number of different, and we're trying to kind of encompass all of those in here. In the area of total planning, which is one of your council goals, we have an applications analyst in IT that is going to be there to support what we call our Acela system, which is our permitting system. So it really helps support all of our development activity in the city and is really kind of the key framework system that provides for that. We're also looking at a number of different system and technology upgrades to ensure that as we go on, that we have the right and current versions of the software or current versions of the applications that we need, and that our computer applications and things are supported either through the the right Windows version, those types of things. So there's some money there to do that, as well as a security assessment. The security assessment is primarily to help with a comprehensive security assessment to focus on all aspects of our security, as well as comprehensive technical audits. So it's important to us that we ensure that those systems are operating with the right amount of security, and recently you've been hearing about a lot of those problems when security isn't a focus. So we're doing some of that. In the HR department, we've got some tuition reimbursement increases. So this was an item that came up as part of council discussion last year that they'd be interested in seeing if we can apply some additional funding to our tuition reimbursement program to ensure that those who are in programs that are eligible for tuition reimbursement, that, as you recall, the policy is that we can pay up to 80% of the fees associated with that. And so this would help ensure that we're able to hit that 80% mark. In the past, we have not been able to hit quite that 80%. So employees didn't always know how much they were going to be receiving. And then, of course, having some additional funding for special development opportunities as they come up. And those are being described as things like if employees, in the quest for excellence, if employees have an opportunity to go to like the Harvard School of Management, things like that, that are really prestigious and good opportunities. And if we have employees that are, number one, eligible, and number two, have the ability to do that, we'd like to be able to do that for them.
Questions?
Questions?
Please, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Katie, can you go to page 519 over your supplements?
My big book?
The big book.
519.
Can you give us an update on the disaster recovery planning phase? I know that we spent a lot of time last year talking about this, and now especially as we're hearing more and more breaches, this year especially, I want to see where we're at as far as where our plan is for this issue.
Yes, I would love to give the update, but I think John Imig would be a better person to provide you specifics on that.
Mayor, members of the council, Vice Mayor Edwards. Brief update on our disaster recovery business continuity planning. To date, what we have done is procured redundant sand storage, currently providing a replicated environment for our critical servers. Our public safety systems in the police department, they've been running with hot failover systems residing in two separate locations, so that provides for continuity if we have an issue with either one of the systems at the police department. We've deployed network domain controllers in 4 separate city facilities, so we've distributed that environment to allow work to continue in terms of logins and business work for our city employees as they continue to work. Our utility SCADA systems are running in multiple city facilities, so that we can continue to provide water and wastewater services to our citizens. We've equipped all of our servers with fault-tolerant drive arrays, redundant drive arrays, as well as our network storage. Got some upcoming items for this summer that we have in the works, which we're going to be deploying additional SAN storage arrays and backup storage devices to continue to fulfill the goals of complete disaster recovery, preparedness, and business continuity, as well as working in conjunction with our facilities and facility engineering areas within the city on work at the Pinnacle Peak Public Safety Facility, which was identified through our study of the department services last year that we talked about, our program review, as the primary location that we should be deploying secondary systems to. That one's going to take some careful coordination because of the work that needs to be done at that facility here over the next couple of years. So we're continuing the progress on it. We've made significant progress since we last spoke about this last year.
Where do we stand? I know we talked offline a couple months ago, maybe a little bit longer, about partnering with other cities that may be having an issue of being able to have a capacity of creating a facility. Did we ever further discuss that with those other cities?
We certainly did, and I think evaluation is still ongoing. I haven't heard anything recently, but we do have some opportunities that have recently surfaced with other government entities in the West Valley that we're going to be pursuing here in the very near future about that.
And I know you're doing a great job of keeping this at the forefront. I strongly, emphasize to stay on top of it, because like I said, with the breaches they seem like every week there's another breach in the news. I just don't want to have Peoria on the headlines saying that we've been breached.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor.
No, none of us want that. Thank you.
I would just like to say I was fortunate enough to take a long tour of the IT department the other day, and I have to say how proud I was. They are really the quiet giant over there, behind the scenes, maintaining all of our systems, from public safety to human resources to, utility payments, and the storage and redundancy and security issues that they have in place are just more than impressive, and it's obvious why other cities are asking us to assist them with those same kind of criteria for them. So it might be a great source of revenue, but I think more than that, it is really a compliment to you and to your staff and to all the things that you've put in place to make sure that Peoria is running the smoothest and the most secure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for everything that you're doing. So nobody really has to think about IT, and we love that. Just you.
Yeah.
So thank you. All right, any other questions? So we're still on administration then, right?
Yes, if there's any other questions on administration?
I had one other,
Okay.
and it's for city attorney.
Very good.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Kemp. My comment, really more so than a question, is about the victims program that you have in place.
Yes.
I have heard really great things about it, and I would just like you to let everyone on the council know how that program runs and the success that you've had.
Mayor, Council, under the Arizona Constitution and Arizona statutes, victims of crimes, both misdemeanors and felonies, are entitled to a series of services to vindicate their constitutional rights. And the police department addresses those up through the point of a case being referred to the city attorney's office. Then it becomes the city attorney's responsibility to address victims' rights from that point all the way through the judicial process. We have two people in the city attorney's office, a victim assistance coordinator, John Goodman, and a legal specialist, Judy Palaka, who operate this program. And what we do is once a case comes into our office for either as a complaint filed with the court or a case that we review for charging, we notify victims of all steps. We work with victims to participate in all steps of the court proceedings so that a victim, literally from the time the case comes in, there's a seamless ability to participate through our courts. And that's really important in things like domestic violence, because a victim may come in and they come into the pretrial and with a number of very conflicting emotions, everything from wishing the case would go away to perhaps regretting that they had even involved law enforcement. We need to prosecute that case on behalf of the state and to preserve the public interest, and at the same time working with that victim. And this program does that, as well as assist at the end of the program victims in their right to obtain restitution and recover restitution for their damages and injuries that they suffer. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions that anyone has.
Any questions? Well, I just want to make one more comment, and that is that the amount of communication that you supply a victim is just critical in helping them to feel like they are going to receive justice and that they are a part of this process. So it means a lot to our citizens, and so I just want to thank you for doing that.
And I will certainly convey that to Mr. Goodman and Ms. Palaka as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And lawyers can be quick.
I hope not all the time.
Anything else?
No.
Oh, okay. Next.
Okay, the next grouping we've titled Leadership and Management and Communications. And this, of course, is the mayor and council budget, as well as city management and the support staff that support you. There are, in that grouping, 16 total employees, counting all of the staff on the third floor. And the council budget has a total of $660,000. This covers everything that you all do, including district funds and attendance in meetings and conferences and the like. The city manager's office, which is this city management and leadership group that includes your council assistants, has a budget of $2.6 million, and that includes not only those staff, but also our government affairs staff. We have 2 employees in that area. We have our Office of Sustainability and Financial Accountability, that's Lisa Estrada, and we have the work that Tammy Shreve does in strategic management in the city. So this is an area, of course, that we've recently done some organizational change about, and I think it's come together real well. We've taken the group and really brought a cohesive focus to the work of the staff, so that it's not an office where a couple of people do this and a couple of people do that. We're really all in it together, and that helps us keep our costs down going forward, and I'm real pleased with how that all has worked. The other area in this section is the Office of Communications. We have 9 employees in this area, and they have a budget of $1.5 million, and they have all of our public information functions within the city, as well as the operation of our websites and our social media and our Channel 11 studios and the programming that we create there. Just a couple of notes, and I think Katie's going to get into this, but I'll mention it as well. There are a few things that we have added in this area, particularly in the communications office. We are increasing by 1 the employees there, and this is to really help focus on this package that's around economic development primarily. Katie mentioned that there's a position in IT that will help improve our permit processing piece of economic development and our customer service in that area. But one of the areas that we've identified, and you mentioned in your workshop, was really marketing the city more, putting out a lot more information about our opportunities for investment. The whole shovel-ready concept, for example. A lot of work in working with the Greater Phoenix Economic Council and other economic development entities locally and around the country to put Peoria on the map in terms of the open for business sign, you might say. And it's really important that we add some resources in that area to meet your expectation, our expectation, of improved marketing of the city. Additionally, we've put some money in this budget in the area of about $100,000 for consulting services, because we know that a lot of the work that will be done there, and this also bleeds over into your image and leadership goal that you've identified, that helps us in raising the bar in terms of Peoria's presence in the region. And we know that we're going to need some marketing professionals, communication professionals to come in and support our work in a consulting basis, and we've put some money there in the budget to do that as well. One other point that I would mention, and this kind of goes back to the economic development initiatives as well, is that we've also place-marked some money in the non-departmental budget to help us craft the quality of life initiative going forward. This was a topic of considerable conversation at your workshop, and this will be a significant effort over the next couple of years. And we put some money in there so that we can bring a high-level staff person in to work on that in a dedicated fashion, along with some outside consultants that we'll probably need to work on that area as well. So we really wanted to be responsive to everything that you had said, and we're putting some money in these areas to make sure that we can be. Now that said, we haven't had a chance in the couple of weeks since the workshop to really drill down into detail about what that will be, and we're looking forward to coming back to you in a workshop setting or a seminar, no doubt, setting where we have a little more time to really talk in more detail about that. So now I'll pitch it to Katie.
Okay, thank you. So all I was going to just follow up with is that, as Carl mentioned, you can see up here we have the Public Information Officer with some economic development focus on that. When we come back and talk to you next week about economic development, we'd like to kind of present all of these sort of as a package. So you're seeing them sort of individually, kind of where they live in the budget, but overall, that's a pretty big package that I think is going to help support council's objectives as it relates to economic development, and certainly Scott will be here to help with that as well. So as Carl mentioned, we've got a number of things in here that really kind of push us kind of to that front of the line when it comes to getting noticed and being regional leaders and things, and really marketing our city. In addition, just sort of some one-off things, we have created an Office of Sustainability and Economic Efficiency. Funding for that department, or that division, I should say, is included in here, and that's going to help support the work that Lisa Estrada is doing in sustainability, and ensure that where we can and where it's reasonable and where it makes sense, that we're implementing sustainable solutions throughout the city.
Any questions? I would just like to make a comment. I think one of the strong points of the city of Peoria has been our ability to be flexible when we needed to be, and that was obvious during the economic downturn when we were able to change our operation, securing our employees and securing our core services all along. No matter how long or how deep that downturn stayed with us, we continued to be flexible and make adjustments all the way along. And with the unfortunate and early passing of John Schell last year, we were also able to continue on right at the beginning of the legislative session. We were able to continue to maintain a presence at the legislature and save ourselves, from a couple of really damaging bills. So I would just like to say thank you for putting into place a cabinet to take the place of a really, really strong department leader that we lost so suddenly. So that flexibility and that adaptability is really a crucial part of Peoria and our success as a city. So thank you for that.
Well, and thank you for mentioning that, and it really was a team approach, as we've done, as you point out, in other circumstances in the past, where we all come together and work as a team to meet the challenge in front of us. And we did, and we succeeded, and I appreciate you recognizing that.
Thank you.
One thing I'm really proud of in this is our dedication to youth and training our kids, and coming from a background, a life of actually teaching kids and training kids and working with them. And it's redundant to say they are our future. And so we should treat them well, and we should teach them, we should invest in them. And I think this budget clearly says that we think that our youth are important. And I think these two young men who are invisible here tonight, but their names remain, are just prime examples of choosing the best, and there are a lot of best kids out there. So I'm really glad that we're going to continue to nurture that, and that we're putting our money where our heart is.
Thank you. Anything else?
All right. Let's see, that takes us to the next area of planning and development. And this, of course, includes the Planning Community Development Department. They have 15 total employees and a budget of $5 million. They do the neighborhood coordination, community development administration, planning, and our community development block grant area, which of course is a very important way that we can fund some social services in the community using federal money. Also in this section is the development and engineering group. This has our building safety division, our engineering administration, development engineering, capital engineering. Those are the capital project engineers that design and construct our capital improvement projects in the community, the design and construction area, engineering inspection, and our traffic engineering, which operates all of the traffic signals throughout the community. They have 57 employees with a $8.3 million budget. And this is another area that has seen some change. You'll recall in the opening remarks of the budget, I talked about taking our economic development department and moving the permitting function into our engineering area. And this reflects that. We're taking the people that have been in our economic development department doing the permit issuance, which has worked well, but we're moving them into our engineering department. Now, why would we do that, right, if it's worked so well? Because really it's now a time when we're seeing increased activity in the private development market. As you all know, we're now seeing developers moving through getting their entitlements, beginning the process of building the homes, building the neighborhoods. We're seeing an increase there. And moving that function back into the Department of Engineering, where we really have the depth of service there, allows for some synergies and some efficiencies moving forward. It also gives us an ability to take our economic development folks, Scott White and his staff, and focus them on the high bar that the council is setting in economic development, because it's an opportunity and it's exciting. We all feel real good about the energy that the council has for economic development, and we want to make sure that we're keeping a core staff really focused on economic development. And this change, I think, helps in both of those arenas. So I just wanted to spend a little more time talking about why we would do that.
So, of course, in these areas, there are a number of important things that we've accomplished more recently, especially in the area of some of the customer service aspects that we've been trying to do in our planning and development services areas. And that includes, as you may recall, we've implemented our self-certification program, the over-the-counter plan review program, the electronic document review is being implemented currently, and then we're looking at online permitting coming online pretty quick as well. So there's a number of really important customer service type items that these departments are responsible for in providing that service to our residents, to our development partners. Also, some of the more, longer-term, long-range planning aspects related to, say, open space planning or preservation, looking at our development function and how we can help support economic development as it relates to the planning requirements for economic development, as well as ensuring that our citizens, again, have good community investments made within their neighborhoods, that they have access to resources that they may need, and that we have, really excellent staff to deliver those services, those who understand the environments that they're working in and can really provide you with the kind of information and support that you need. So some of the things that you'll see in the overall budget development this year was that we needed to continue to support, as Carl mentioned, that continuing growth that we're seeing in the city. And some of our strategies that we've used as we've sort of gone through the downturn and been coming out is that we wanted to ensure that we provide for some staffing levels in order to ensure that while we may not need them on a permanent basis yet, or not sure if we need them yet, that we continue to provide one-time money to continue the level of service and ensure that we're not missing anything when it comes to our development partners walking through the door. Because there was a point in time where we weren't sure how much and how many and how big these projects were going to be. But we still have some dollars in here to maintain our contract planners, plan reviewers, and inspector. We do anticipate that as time goes on, we're going to need to make some conversions of those to actual FTEs, and that would require committing some ongoing resources to that. In doing so, one thought that we have and one policy item this council can, we'd like to bring forward to this council in regards to this is that we've talked about and we are desperately in need of updating our fees related to our development services area. About a year and a half ago, council approved a policy associated with a cost recovery model for development services. It's time for us to go and bring those fees up to date. In some of the areas, we haven't done it for over 20 years. So if that gives you some sense, not because, partly because those fees were meeting, we had so much demand happening that some of those fees were meeting it, but we really need to go and look at that, and that will help support some of these future needs that we have in this area as well. Again, this budget continues those community investments as we talked about. Neighborhood grant funding is such an excellent program and something that is used every year. There's waiting lists for people who are interested in that program, and I know Karen could talk about it for hours, but there's funding in there for that as well as for some training and professional development for staff. Under your total planning goal, we've identified some funding for a Sonoran Preserve program, meaning getting some studies done and some support for how we might be able to ensure kind of that. We've completed the open space plan, but now what's the next step? What do we need to do? How are we going to really get that program going and maybe get some preservation aspects included in our overall open space program? And of course, as council mentioned at the council goal setting, wanting to increase some funding associated with historic preservation and really look at some of those local landmarks or ways that we might be able to put Peoria on a map maybe in a little bit different way. So, and again, the last one is the senior planner, and that's going to be a planner that's going to help overall planning, but certainly be focused on how to ensure that we have all of the right zoning in place, all of the right entitlements in place for us to really further our economic development goals. So with that,
let me add one thing to what Katie said. And at your workshop, you did talk about the possibility of adding an additional half-time person in our human services area. We've not yet identified an ability to do that, so the budget before you does not have that in it yet. But we have put some additional money into the city's contribution to human services.
Right.
So that was already in the works. We were already doing that. But I just want to be clear, we don't as yet have identified a half-time position, but it's a priority for us to find that. So.
I was particularly interested in restoring some of that historic preservation money because we need to identify some areas as local landmark. Thank you, Chris. I hoped that it would be more. I hoped it would go from 8 up to 20. It went to 12. Chris, is that going to really do what I want to do as far as Varney and finishing the Old Town local landmark district? And then you have other things too. You have the Weedville and then the archaeological preserve up north. Is moving it to 12,000 enough, or do we need to look at a little bit more there?
Good evening, Mayor Carlett, members of the council, Councilmember Hunt. Thank you for that question. What we have today is $8,000 that we can use principally for historic preservation, but also some other special projects as they arise. So this supplements it and brings it to about $20,000. And one of the things we've been very successful with in the last several years is getting matching SHPO grants. Excuse me. You mentioned the Weedville study. Well, that was one of the recipients of a matching SHPO grant. We did a two-phase project. We completed a context study of the Weedville area, which is 75th and Thunderbird, and then we did a survey of buildings to try to indicate which might be significant, what might we want to go after placing on a local register. So I think that funding's, about in the same ballpark. We can certainly complete the Varney context plan that's on next year's work plan. And there are other projects that seem to arise as they come up. For example, this year, the Marinette Canal, which is up north. There was a historic canal that we thought was, we understood that some of it was on private property, so we were able to study it and understand the significance and work with the developer to try to figure out how to secure that. So I guess the point is that projects come up each year that we don't always know ahead of time, but I think with the amount of funding we have, that gives us plenty of money to not only complete the projects on our work plan, which include the Varney project, but then give us a little bit of funding for other projects as they arise.
Okay, and when you say next year, are we talking calendar year, correct?
FY16, the next funding year, starting in July, right?
Oh, perfect. Okay, just what I wanted to hear.
And Councilmember
okay.
Hunt, just as a quick clarification, so what Chris was saying is that he's got 8,000 in his current base budget. What this request is to add an additional 12, so that does get you to the
There's
20,000. Yes.
Correct.
That's what I wanted to hear. Perfect, thank you. Thank you for
Councilmember
paying
Leone?
attention.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. On this neighborhood grant, $150,000, do we use that whole thing up? Okay, what I would like to do is to raise it to $250,000, because that is a very good program. And I think it's used well, and a lot of people tell me that they've had it, and it's working out just great for them. So I would like to see us maybe can raise another $50,000.
Councilmember Leone, it has been a very successful program. So that's a program where registered HOAs or neighborhood associations can seek matching dollars to do projects within their neighborhood, whether it's landscaping or security updates or lighting improvements. That amount was increased by $50,000, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago. It used to be $100,000, and we increased it to $150,000 about that time period.
Yeah, I remember that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other, Mr. Patena?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, I'd like to shift gears just a little bit. I think a couple years ago, previous council reluctantly passed the self-certification program. And I'm just curious to know how that's working out and if there's any idea that we might want to broaden that in the future.
Well, let me start it. Councilmember Patena, members of the council, when we collectively, all the development departments studied the self-certification issue, we looked at it, we prepared a white paper, and we determined that we're very early on in the development process. We look at entitlements, site plans, and our work involves a lot of neighborhood work and a lot of meetings and planning commission and things like that. And so we didn't feel that the types of cases we had were really a good candidate or well-suited for self-certification. Self-certification's better suited to the permit functions that you have, and so that's where that program was built around some of the specific permit types. But it wasn't particularly well-suited for planning applications.
Tenant improvements.
And our experience has been that we have not had much expressed activity in this area because the applicants haven't wanted it. It hasn't really been a high demand. We can give you exact numbers, we can bring those back to you. But the building types that work with self-certification are ones that are replicated when you do many in a community. And so it's more a program that's fitted for larger areas, larger metropolitan areas. We bring back utilization rate, but it's been quite low. But it's a service we offer and stand ready to serve if anyone requests it. There's been one or two. Yeah, so are we. Thank you.
I just have one comment. I appreciate that you are working to make sure that your staffing levels are appropriate as we start to increase, the needs and the growth in the city. Your department is just key, and it's just critical that you can stay on top of things and that you can manage all of it without putting yourself into an early grave. I've seen you close to that a couple times, so.
I have gray hair 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you've got that planner in there.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I have something else, but I'm really not sure where it goes, so
Throw it out there.
I'll just throw it out there. Okay, ready to catch. On the identified budget interests, I know that I probably didn't make it like in bold print that Saturday, but I did mention what I think would be an engineering, and I know that I've talked to Andy about it, is the trees along Monroe over here between 83rd and 85th. And I don't exactly know where it would be added of this little tiny book that I did my best to browse through. But has it been addressed, and if not, why not, and how soon can we put something in there? I know it's not going to be done this year. I know it's like, I mean, seriously, but I know it needs to get in there and start marching forward.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Hunt, that would probably be part of the capital program presentation that we'll give.
Okay.
And it would be considered probably a community service, or community works type of program or
Okay.
a project. I've gone out there and evaluated it, the project, and it probably is something that is, we can work with you on and with the residents, the adjacent residents along the street for the improvements in that area.
Okay, I just didn't see it on the identified budget interest, so I didn't know if it had fallen by, I didn't scream and kick loudly enough to get my project on there or what. So I was just checking, but you're still aware of it, so.
We're aware of it, and I'm working with John
Okay.
Sefton, Community Services, on
That's all I need to
coordination.
know. Thank you.
Thank you. I did have one more question, and Chris, it's probably for you. The Grand Avenue Coalition, there is a carryover request. So that means it wasn't spent last year, and we're carrying it over this year. Talk to me again about the Grand Avenue Coalition. We've had a lot of conversations about this, I know. I just wonder about its long-term feasibility and, you know, long-term being the operative word. How long are we going to pay this? Why didn't we pay it last year? Why is it being carried over? And what's our end game here?
Mayor Carlott, members of the council, the Grand Avenue Coalition Fund was established by council, I want to say about 4 years ago, and it was put in our budget as a $50,000 per year ongoing contribution. So the idea was that as the commuter rail issue arose regionally, and those discussions occurred, that this pot of money would continue to build until at some point when the city, if a need arose for a study or for us to contribute to a study, that would help, we would have the funding then to participate in that. So I think with this budget, that fund would be then, what, $250,000? There still hasn't been an identified need for that, so.
It's at
Sure.
200 right now.
Mayor, if I might add to that, the funding source was originally, and Chris is absolutely right, came up 4 years ago, and we were assessing at that point in time our membership, if you'll recall, on the Metropolitan Light Rail Committee, and we had a $50,000 membership fee that we paid every year. At that point in time, the light rail was extended out beyond 2026 for the city of Peoria, so we decided there'd be better use of our funds for multimodal to maybe set it aside and look at an opportunity in the future and withdraw from that dues-paying membership. So council took that action, and we've been putting it in, as Chris said, for a future project, which we, at that point in time, Grand Avenue was absolutely the top priority. Getting that program, you know, as far as the West Valley and what direction we're going to launch, yet, you know, is very long-term. So I think that's something that council will be considering in the future as we look at our various transportation options. And that money will be there for a seed or a pot of money, maybe for matching funds also, if there's an opportunity to look at some other multimodal solution or the Grand Avenue. So that's kind of where that came from. decide to save our money rather than continue that membership when it was so far in the future.
Okay, good. I'm very happy to hear that. I didn't recall that we were no longer going to put the funds towards a membership, and that we were just keeping them for our future transportation needs. Let's call it something else.
Yeah, we should, you're right.
We sure will.
It should be,
Yeah,
it's
called
carrying its
Grand
old
Avenue
label.
Coalition, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And, we still are active with, and this is particularly for those of you that are newer to the council, we still are active with the communities up along Grand Avenue about long-term transportation investments. And as Susan and Chris mentioned, the idea has been that there might be commuter rail out that corridor, not light rail as is in Phoenix now, but ultimately commuter rail, which is a heavy rail transit option. But that's long-term. Obviously, there is no commuter rail in the valley. This corridor stacks up high vis-a-vis other corridors in the valley for that transportation investment over time, but it's a long-term play. It's nothing that's happening in the short run. But we do continue to have discussions with El Mirage, Surprise, Glendale about the potential of some improvements in that area. So bus rapid transit is another option that is probably more realistic in the short run, but there are conversations going on, but they don't require a budget allocation.
Well, and I want us to absolutely stay involved and be at the table and be a planner when it comes to anything multimodal that could happen in our region. But I don't think that it's just Grand Avenue, and I don't think that it's just a Grand Avenue coalition. And so, we need to retitle, if not repurpose, those funds
Indeed.
for what we want to use them for, when we want to use them.
Multimodal fund.
Come up with a really...
We'll think of a snappy name.
Something catchy, yeah.
They're clever planners. They'll come up with a title for us.
Yeah, very clever. Yeah, there you go. Okay, anything else?
Yes.
Son?
Not for Chris, though. I see John Sefton hiding over there. He thinks because his wasn't listed specifically that nobody's going to pay attention. John, do you want to trade seats with Chris? He's got a big old smile on his face.
We will be discussing community services on Wednesday, just so you're aware.
Oh, yeah,
but
there'll be lots of time to talk about community services next meeting, so.
Why is it not listed here?
It's listed under operations, so when we look at
wouldn't have
operations.
known that.
I apologize. See, this is like a new thing we're trying.
Well, okay, then if this doesn't belong, I'll still have these questions on Wednesday.
Okay, that's fine too.
I have like 3 or 4, see all these yellow tabs?
Specific to community services?
Yeah, but if you're not on tonight, I didn't know where you were. I didn't see you as operations, so.
Maybe we should come back and do it all at once.
Sure,
so
we
you
can do it
can
all at
have your
once. I don't have
questions
anything
answered
that's
in the
going to
whole
die between
context.
now and Wednesday.
Perfect.
We haven't planted the garden yet, that'll die over.
Sorry you had to make the long trip.
Sorry.
I needed to stretch anyway. Thank you.
Okay, Katie,
Okay.
where are we?
Yeah, I just want, I didn't know if
Yep.
there was any
No,
more questions.
are there any further questions on this area?
No, and
Okay.
council, what is your pleasure? Do you want to continue on, or do you want to take a short break, or?
May I suggest 2 things while I have them on my mind? Okay, this just needs to be clearer.
Sure.
If you want to lump them together for purpose, I agree, we don't need to go, oh my gosh, I sat through those. But these need to say actually who's on, so that I don't call John and wake him up and everything when he can go ahead snoozing. And then the other thing is.
Sure, fair enough.
I don't know why I didn't know that I didn't have it. It could be that I only took this book out this afternoon. But I didn't know which ones were going to, so I started from the front studying, and then I thought to call Karen and say, and I found out that I was the 3rd council person just to ask her that. So if we could have it, we used to have it sent to us, the agenda for the days,
Right.
through email ahead of time.
Yep.
That would really help. Those are just 2 kind of housekeeping things, but.
Sure. Apologize for that. We will make sure that you're fully aware of which areas we're going to be reviewing on any particular day.
Okay.
Council, break, or no?
Oh, let's just keep, I've already gone to the bathroom,
going?
so let's.
Well, what we would like to do, since you are moving pretty quickly, we would like to load and take a little bit out of order, but we're prepared to do it this evening, would be our capital improvement program. So Andy was up a minute ago. We could load the CIP on the drive, and we could present that next if you'd like.
Ask a point of order. What did the public agenda say? Did it limit us to, did the public agenda limit us to anything, or can we continue on?
Nope,
without
we
that?
can continue talking about the budget and, yeah.
That's pretty generic.
We're good.
Vague.
We try to do
We can do
that.
anything we want.
Right.
All right, council, shall we proceed with the CIP? You all okay with that?
If we could take just a quick
And
break
do
in
you wanna
order
take
to...
a break?
I think we need a real quick break just to load that presentation.
10-minute break. We'll be back at 7 o'clock.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.